Yeah, it's my turn next week.
Yeah. You feeling ready?
Sure. Totally watched my thing.
Hello, and welcome to Book Retorts. I'm Sam.
I'm Danielle.
This is the podcast where one of us shares a strange piece of media we find with the other person who doesn't know it. This week, we're continuing with the finale, the grand finale of our 4-part series on the book Lords of the Sky by Angus Wells.
Woohoo!
I'm more excited than you are, probably, because that means I can take a break when we're done here.
And then I get to start. That's exciting.
I know, and you get to share. I'm really excited to see what you got for me next episode. So, if you've been sort of sick of this book, don't worry, it's almost over.
And there might be dragons.
Well, we found the dragons at the end of the last part. This is a good thing to talk about because why don't you summarize what happened last time for us, Danielle?
Gosh. I'm so bad at this. I don't know why
that's what makes it so much fun. This is so much fun.
I was thinking about this a little earlier, and literally the first thing I can remember happening is that they go north.
That's like the end. It's like, or not the end, it's like midway through.
I know, I couldn't remember anything that happened, but like, why did they end up going north? I don't remember.
Going north? Like, what do you mean going north?
They go to the dragon area, to where the changed are.
That's true. That happens, 3 or 4 chapters in.
Right, but I don't remember. I don't even remember where the third section left off.
All right. Let me give you a little starting material here. So it starts with Ryan on the Sentinels. And there's a testing of a bunch of those small boats coming through, and they blast them all to the sky.
Yes, and she feels kind of bad about it.
But there's one person who is found later on a rock who survived.
Oh, yeah, there's that guy, the odd warrior.
Yeah, kind of a big part of this, Danielle.
I didn't remember him at all. I swear I listen when you talk. I don't know why none of this sticks in my head.
Listening and filing it all away for later are different things.
But I even know I'm supposed to file it away, and it just is, it's gone. It was taken out of the Rolodex and, gone.
Maybe it's just this book. I guess we'll find out in future episodes if this is going to be a perennial problem for you.
Okay, so they find the On Warrior, and usually On Warriors kill themselves before they're able to get any information from them. So this is a big find. And this guy has no memory of his past.
Fantasy amnesia.
Exactly. Classic trope. So they take him in. There's a whole moral dilemma about whether or not he should be blamed for his past actions if he can't actually remember them.
Mm-hmm.
And then he I don't remember particularly why, but Ryan gets kind of involved with him, and he becomes friendly with her, I guess is a good term for it.
I think it was that, first off, he thinks she's so beautiful, but also she's the kindest to him.
Mm-hmm.
Where everyone else sort of treats him like a prisoner, she shows kindness, so becomes his guard, his keeper in that way.
Yes. And so they're kind of like a little team now. And then she has to take him somewhere.
Well, there's some really ridiculous stuff here I really want to make sure we don't gloss over. He remembers his name.
Oh, yeah. There's the magic thing where they can't restore his memories, but unless they, I don't know, have a name or something.
Right. Once he remembered his name, that allowed them to put their language into his head magically so they could talk.
That's right. They can't understand each other for that whole first part.
So somehow knowing his own name is what allowed them, they didn't need to know his name. He needed to know his name before they could put the language in his head.
Yes.
Because
magic.
Magic.
There's no reason for that. Name magic.
All right. So then, yes, they have to leave. You're right.
Yeah, they leave the islands and they go on an adventure. I don't remember why. Where are they going?
They're going back to Deburah to try to take him to the Mnemonicos college.
Yeah, because they think that the Mnemonicos will actually, because they talk, their thing is memory, that they'll be able to get him back his memory.
Man, I find it so amazing that this whole book is about ostensibly memory, and here we are.
Me not remembering anything.
Yeah.
Well, I'm clearly not a Mnemonicos, so there we go.
Who is?
And so as they're traveling, they end up at a keep.
Mm-hmm.
And Davio is there, and he gets super excited about seeing Ryan.
Yeah.
I've consistently called her Ryan through this entire thing.
And I enjoy every time you say it.
And he's super excited about that because he hasn't seen her in a really long time, and he meets up with them, and
so
I don't remember what happens
they
when
reconnect
they're there.
briefly, and then Ryan says, I have to go to Deburah, and you got your stories to tell, so we have to part again.
Yeah. And then he, like, stows aboard their ship. He's a stowaway. He, like, jumps on their ship. I don't know what his plan was, because clearly that's never going to work out, but he ends up on their ship. His plan
was to get on their ship and just hope it worked.
Yeah. But then the ship is, like,
Whoa. Please. I know those are the important plot points, and you're doing great, but I really just want to dwell on a few of the more insane parts of this book, because I really enjoy them. When he gets on the ship and Ryan's like, you can't be here, you have to leave, get off the ship because you have your duty, and he says, I will give up being a remember, I quit the college, it's fine. And she tells him he can't do that because if he quits, they're going to take him to the Sorcerer College and wipe his memory out.
Yeah. That's not good. Nobody knows why.
Why do they do that? They're like, we're going to take away all the knowledge you gained in the college and put you back basically into a mental state from before you joined the calling.
Right. And then I had a question about what happens when they retire. Like, if they just retire from being in Monaco's, do they also do the same thing?
Again, maybe they just die. I don't know.
Like, they retire and then they die.
Well, they don't know. They never retire. They just have to work until they're dead.
Be sad.
Anyway, I really just want to bring that up because it's never brought up again by the book, and it's insane, and I love it.
Yeah, that's a bananas process.
It's so good. Suddenly, this whole book is all about magic brain-draining crystals, and I'm here for it.
I do like the brain-draining crystals.
All right, I'm sorry, continue.
Okay, so then the ship gets taken over. Is it by the captain?
No.
By people on the ship? Mutiny aboard the Bounty?
Yes, it's a mutiny aboard the ship by the Changed.
By the Changed that are working on the ship?
Yeah, well, enslaved, right. But yes.
That's what I meant by working, like working on the ship. Doing the work of the ship.
Right, okay. Just make sure we're not losing...
Yes, the slave labor, they mutinied on the ship and take over, but they protect Taviot and Ryan and that dude.
Tesdal.
Yeah, and that was never going to come to me.
I figured.
No recollection. They protect them because they're Ert's friend. Well, Davio is Ert's friend.
Mm-hmm.
And then they pirate. Is that where they, like, take the ship up towards the north?
Yep. That's it.
Oh, that's how they got there.
It all comes back to you.
It does. Oh, I can't believe I forgot that.
Right? There's so much good and stuff in there. That's great.
Yeah. So they get to the north,
and
they find the community of the Changed that were up there that we assumed were probably up there. And it's like a whole society, and there's a system or whatever, a group of people that are in charge of it.
A council.
Yes, that have differing opinions on how the overthrowing of their master situation should go down.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that one woman who's like evil.
Yeah, Alanin, who is crazy and hates them and really wants to do some bloodshed. And there's he's part of the council.
Right, but he's much nicer.
Yeah, so you get the reunion where he's much more sympathetic, saying, we shouldn't stoop to the level of our enslavers.
But they still lock them up. And there's like a whole delay. I mean, it goes on forever of them. Like, I don't remember why there's a delay, but it just goes on forever about them trying
because they want Ryan to give them information on the magic of the Dar people, basically to be a source of information they can use to overcome the Sentinels or the border cities or whatever.
That's right. And Ryan suddenly has a huge change of heart because on the islands, she was super like apathetic about the war and wasn't sure that was a thing that they should be doing. And then as soon as she gets to this community, she's like, I will never betray my people.
Yes. And to be fair, again, to this book, those can be similar things. You can not be enthused about a war, but still not want to be a traitor about your people. But also it feels like she's not trying very hard to find a middle ground where she can say, like, hey, maybe I could act as a go-between because I can communicate magically with my people because they can all talk in their heads magically, and maybe we can broker some kind of agreement or something. I just thought of this off the top of my head just now, which isn't obvious, I bet. But anyway, she just seems very much suddenly to go from 0 to never betray.
Yes. So that happens, and they're stuck in the jail, except for Tezdal.
Yes, Tezdal. Yes, because they want to demonstrate their power to Ryan so that they can drain her memory if necessary by restoring his.
Yeah, that's right. Because they have the ability to do that. And so that's what the delay is that
yes.
They agree that they'll wait until Tezdal gets his memory back so that the change can prove they can actually control memory. And then once that happens, she said that supposedly she'll give them the information, but she doesn't actually want to do that. She plans to escape or whatever.
She says she'll make her decision about whether to give the information or to have her brain drained.
Right. And then they are stuck in their dungeon tower thing.
It's a cell. I don't know. It's a cell.
Wherever it is. And they have a lot of sex.
Yep. And that's a continuing theme throughout this book.
And for whatever goes on and the changed are kind of in league with each other, they leave Tezdal out of it, which I thought was kind of dumb since he is actually like very supportive of Ryan.
Yes, he's sworn an oath to her, and he is a high lord among the On. He is one of their best warriors and from a noble family.
Which they know when he gets his memory back.
Yes, which he knows, and he explains all this to Davio and Ryan.
And then he helps them escape from jail.
He does, but I do want to just quickly step back one more time, because Tezdal's backstory is great, and I don't want us to miss that, and the fact that he grew up as a warrior and was the best warrior. And my favorite part is when he had his coming of age ceremony and killed a horse.
Oh, yeah, he killed the horse.
So I just want to make sure we didn't miss that because we had so much fun with it last time.
And now I'm really worried whenever he's around a horse.
Yes, now you know why you're worried.
This is concerning. Okay, but then he really does help them escape.
Yes, he helps them escape.
And they kill some change, don't they?
Yes, they kill the guards, essentially, the magic change mages who were guarding them.
Yeah, and Ert helps them out a bit.
Yeah, Ert helps, and they all flee together.
Because they have to be united, because that's the back of the book, or, the front cover of the book. It says that
they have to be united because the book says so.
And so they're together, and then they go off to find the dragons.
Well, they leave, and the dragons come and meet them.
Oh, yeah, the dragons do come. I actually forgot that.
Well, it only happens like the last 5 pages, so I don't blame you for forgetting it. But there are dragons.
I was so excited about the dragons, though. I can't believe I forgot that they actually came.
I have to issue a correction, because I misunderstood something about the end of the last part. I thought the dragon was talking to Davio at the end, and Ryan was demanding the dragon's name. There was actually a person riding the dragon who was talking to them. So that is made more clear at the beginning of the next section.
Can the dragons talk?
Kinda. We'll get into all of this. I promise you, there's a lot of insane stuff to get into with the dragons, and I'm very excited to do that.
Okay. Well, that was the end of the section, so.
It was, so we can get right into this part. It's great. So, as you mentioned, they were running away. They're finding the dragons. The dragons are there. Some of them destroyed the skyboats, and there's this man named Belek, who is a dragon rider, who's like, come on, let's go. Let's get on the dragon if you want to live. Davio and Ryan are kind of like, how do you know us? How do you know our names? And all he says is blood calls to blood, and there's truth in dreams. So somehow they know each other. He knows of them through the dreams, and I'm going to get into it a little bit later because it tries to explain all this, and it's amazing, and I love it.
The prophetic dreams that they were having earlier?
Yeah. It's great. I'm so excited for this. Ert is very scared. He is not comfortable at all with dragons because apparently there's supposed to be some kind of ancestral fear of dragons built into his biology.
Well, yeah, they were given to the dragons to be eaten.
Yes, but even now that they think they don't exist, he has this fear of them that is instinctual.
Yeah, that makes sense, though.
It does. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just want to make sure we know that part because it'll be countermanded pretty quickly. They connect with the dragons. They each get their own dragon to ride. Ert is very uncertain about Ryan the dragon, and so Ert is scared of the dragons, and he's like, I cannot ride a dragon. And so Daviot walks up to him and does a Vulcan neck pinch to knock him out. And I'm very excited about that. He just squeezes his neck and he falls unconscious, and they strap him into a dragon to take him back to the dragon castle while he's unconscious so he won't be freaking out the whole way.
He's not putting up with that nonsense.
Yeah, and it's really great. I'm like, I did not expect the Vulcan neck pinch to make an appearance in this book, and I am all about that. See, this is where I realize why I actually love this book a little bit, because this last section, like, crams all the insanity into it, and it's great. It's such a, like, a thrill ride of craziness. I love it.
I'm excited.
So they climb on the dragons. Davio says something weird. He saw insects crawling on them, but they paid me no heed. I'm like, what? Okay, there are insects crawling on the dragons, but they ignore you? Why do we need to know that? That's cool. Weird. As they're getting on them, Belloc introduces the dragons to the riders, and he gives them the names. And my favorite is probably Daviot. So first there's Cathanria, which is someone, I think that's Ert's dragon, or Ryan's, doesn't matter. But the one that I actually remember is Daviot's dragon, which name is Deburah. Deburah the dragon.
That's my favorite.
It's so good. And it's Deburah spelled like, you know, a suburban child, Deburah. So Deburah. Deburah.
Great.
It's great. I love it. Deburah the dragon. It is my favorite thing. I love it so much. And I just had to point that out. So they learn that, you know, all the dragon names. Oh, this is Deburah. And they get on, they fly away. And while they're flying, Daviot has this sort of mind meld with his dragon. There is a union, a mental link that is formed. And he says, I had only known once before this feeling, when I knew I loved Ryan.
I was going to say with Ryan.
Yeah. He then says, now I hasten to add, as with Ryan, but in a different way that I cannot properly describe, though a dragon master would understand. So, first off, super clear, thank you. Second off, he doth protest too much.
Maybe he's super into the dragon.
I'll get into this. But there's a lot of really intense sexual tension between the dragon masters and the dragons. And again, I kind of love it. It's so good.
Do they all have this bonding with their dragons, or just Daviot?
No, they all do.
Okay.
And so they get to the dragon castle, and
is the dragon castle, are they like actual castles? I've wondered this since the beginning.
I should mention, they get to a dragon castle. It's in the mountains up north in Tartarus. It's basically been carved on this mountainside. And it's huge. It's enormous. The biggest thing he's ever seen. It's bigger than the colleges. It's bigger than any courtyard in the grandest palaces. It's this massive, massive structure because dragons are big.
Did the dragons carve them, or did...
No. So we learn later, and I don't mind skipping ahead here because it doesn't really matter when you learn this, is that the dragon masters carved them with magic. These were magic-formed caves and things that they sort of shaped out of the rock using their magic.
Got it.
So the dragons live in regular caves, and the dams, as the males or females are referred to, are the only ones that will be ridden, and they're the smaller ones. And you have the bulls, which are twice as large or something like that, bigger than the females. And no one rides the males because they're too unfriendly, not gentle enough.
What do they bring to the society out of curiosity?
The males?
Yeah.
Reproduction and fighting. Like, they'll fight with the dragons. They'll follow the other dragons and go fighting and hunting, but they won't be ridden.
Got it. I was just curious about the division of labor between the dragons.
Well, the dragons are, I don't want to say semi-sentient in this. They are sentient. They communicate telepathically with the dragon riders, the dragon masters, and they clearly have logical thought process and all of that. But they also are very sort of instinctual driven, and the dragon masters are sort of holding them back from going on rampages whenever they're doing things later in the book.
Stupid dragon masters.
Yeah. I mean, let's get some fun out there. And each male has a clutch of females, like a harem. And when they land, Ert starts to come back to his senses and is still very uncertain.
Poor Ert. He's like,
I know,
knocked out. He's put onto a dragon. He wakes up and he's surrounded by them.
And Daviot's asking Belloc, the old dragon master, hey, what's going on here? And all Belloc will say, in time, story man, all in time. I'm like, come on, we're almost done with the book. How much time is left? Let's just get some answers. And only Ryan seems to be at ease with this. Like, Ryan is totally chill. She's like, the pattern, I'm all here for this, no problem. She is on board with dragon riding and dragon castles. She is 100% like committed.
Well, once you accept that your entire life is apparently fate-driven, like, why bother doing anything? Just be cool with anything that happens.
It's amazing how Ryan quickly surrenders her entire existence to the pattern. Then we learn from Bellick, as he's trying to calm down Earth, that there are changed living nearby. There's a valley beneath the mountains where a bunch of changed live. And Bellick has dealings with them. He'll go down and give them meat in exchange. They will tithe him wine and other food. So they have an exchange going on. And my thought is, wait a minute, I thought the Change were deathly afraid of the dragons. How come they would come up here to live in the shadow of the dragon castle?
Well, I mean, you could live someplace that you're not necessarily comfortable with.
Yes, I just think it's very funny how a massive fear of dragons is kind of like ignored by these people. We learn from Bellick that everyone already knows the Wraith is evil and that Alanin has power-hungry tendencies. And they all just moved away up north to get away from them. And that's why there's a changed enclave, a changed settlement up here. But we learn later that the dragons don't really hunt the Change anymore because, and to quote, they proved poorer sport than Truman. So the dragons don't really need to eat people, but they like the sport of it. They had that kind of like most dangerous game thing going on where they like to hunt the best prey.
I mean, I kind of figured that out earlier, like whatever episode that was, where you mentioned that they decided that they were going to start eating the humans again because there were just too many of them.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's part of it. But yeah, so they have that thing. Apparently the Chains were just too boring to hunt, too easy. And they love hunting mages and magic people the most because apparently they taste better.
Taste of magic.
There are more crystals in the caves of the Dragon Master. The crystals come back and apparently the dragons eat the crystals.
Ooh, magic crystals.
Yeah, they eat them like birds. You'll eat stones to help with digestion.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently they gain some kind of power from that, but it doesn't drive the dragons mad. Only people get driven mad by the crystals, not the dragons.
So are the crystals themselves magical, or is it just that they're like imbued with magic?
I think the crystals themselves are like the source of magic for the Dar people, and the dragons, like they are a magical entity, and the Dar learned how to use magic from the crystals and by channeling their power.
Yeah, that's what it kind of sounds like if the dragons are eating them and then getting magical.
Well, I mean, again, the dragons are magic in like a more innate way, in the way that, you know, fantasy dragons are magic, but not like that they gained magic from the crystals. They just are magical beings that are more connected to nature, and therefore the crystals are just a good source of magical food or digestion helping. It's not really clear, but that's sort of what it's getting at. All
right, well, carry on.
And then Bellick starts talking about the dreams they're having and how they all dreamed together. And he says, the dragons, they dream. And I think their dreams span the whole world, which I thought was great.
So what does that mean?
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Like dream of the whole world? Do they create dreams for the whole world? So are they part of people's dreams?
The dragons called to Davio, called to Ryan. The dreams were sent to them, apparently, or something like that. And that's how they became Dragon Masters, because they had this dream. Davio's asking about why they had these dreams, why them specifically had the dreams when no one else has had these dreams in a long time. And Bellick is the last Dragon Master in this castle. He's the last one. There's no one else. So the fact that they have been losing Dragon Masters and none have been coming up is, you know, Davio asked why that happened. The reason that happened is, Bellick says, is because you believed in them. So it's kind of like a Tinkerbell thing where you believe in the dragons.
Did they clap?
Get you to connect with them. They do not clap. But it's something like that, where their belief in the dragons allowed them to receive the sending of the dreams of the Dragon Masters, which drove them north to become the Dragon Masters.
So I have a question.
Okay, please.
How come, like, the Change seem to believe in the dragons?
Yep.
Because they all died from them. Why are the Change never Dragon Masters? How come they didn't get a bunch of dreams?
Well, is, but that's a very good question.
Right, but there's a whole population of Changed.
Yeah, that live right. There's a whole village that lives right underneath the dragon castle.
Yeah, they definitely believe in the dragons.
Don't know, Danielle. Maybe they didn't believe, like, they didn't want it. They didn't believe in, you know, becoming Dragon Master. So Davio always thought about, oh, what if the dragons could help? What if he could tame or become part of the dragons?
Did Urt think that? Like, was he sitting around going, I'm scared of dragons, but they'd be super useful.
I think Daviote infected him, is how I get this, is his stories infected, like Ryan with belief, he infected Tesdal with belief, and he infected Urt with belief.
How often did he talk to Tesdal about this? I guess they were having the same dreams, but prior to that, I mean.
He was talking to him all about the boat ride and the travel through the Darbek to get to the Chain City. They were talking. So they had some conversations.
There aren't any other... This is just like the rest of the book where... Why is he always the first person to think of anything ever?
I know, it's great. And somewhere in this section, I forget exactly where, I started to think this book might actually be genius because it would be a perfect satire of the sort of fantasy trope book because you have this person who has no worthy qualities. They're not special in any particular way. Like, he has a great memory, but that never helps him. Like, there's no part of that comes into play other than that he knows some history, so he has these philosophical thoughts. And yet, he constantly finds himself succeeding and given ultimate power. And I think it's a great sort of send-up of that character in a way. Because
I'd love for that to be the case.
If this was a satire of what happens when an average person who thinks way too highly of themselves somehow stumbles into actual power, it's great. It's amazing. It's kind of the perfect display. And the fact that we spend all this time with him and his self-importance as opposed to the really interesting parts is another little great piece of satire. Because, like, why don't we spend time with Tesdal's childhood or Ryan's childhood or Urt's life, who all seem more interesting than Daviote, but because he's the most important one. And that's what the book focuses on. So I think that's a great piece of satire. And I like to think of it that way.
I'd love for that to be what actually happened, because that would make this 1,000 times better.
Exactly. So I think I can't say for sure, but I feel like there's some genius, even unintentional, in the satire for this book.
Let's go with it.
So they keep talking, and they ask Bell, like, how does he know about all these things happening? How does he know about the war between the On and the Dard? How does he know about the council? And he says, my dragons dream and see the world, and sometimes I fly them south to observe. Mostly, they feel what transpires there. Apparently, the dragons just sort of have clairvoyance and pass it on to their dragon masters.
Do they literally fly south, or does he mean he flies them south in dreams?
No, I think he literally flew them south sometimes to observe, and just no one happened to see him. Because dragons are hard to spot.
It's like, how do they not see the dragons in the sky? They're like, they have to be highly attuned to things in the sky because there are sky boats.
Yes.
They have do the dragons have invisibility powers or magic?
No, they don't.
How are they not seen when they fly south?
I don't know, Danielle. It's just a throwaway line, and then we move on pretty quickly.
But it's an important throwaway line.
Not to the book, Danielle. Not to the book.
Oh, this is hard for me.
I know. I told you, this last part of the book is the best. Everything comes up, and it's amazing. And Bel's like, once we were the lords of the skies, but we outlived our time and folk forgot us. That bleeds out power, forgetting. So they are lords of the sky? They're the lords of the sky, and then On are the sky lords? Yes. No! That's exactly what it is, and I love it. It's so good. Not good. Why are they named the same thing? Because, no, not in the same thing, Danielle. They're very different. You have the lords of the sky and you have the sky lords. Get it right. I've got the differentiation in my mind. I don't think they're very different. Well, this hurts my heart. Okay. I'm sorry, Danielle, but we gotta get through this because it's so good. They're lords of the sky. I told you, it was a lot of build-up, and it all pays off. They're the title. They're the titular lords of the sky. Okay. And so he's saying that forgetting bleeds us of power, so it's all about memory again. But, the mnemonicos and the memory and the forgetting, there's loss of power and there's power and knowledge. None of that really matters, though, because none of that's ever going to be used in any way to solve any of the problems in this book. I'll give you a spoiler. It's going to be dragons. Dragons solve the problems. In the book, even though the entire plot revolves around a mnemonicos. Yeah, it doesn't matter. He could just be some dude with a good understanding of history and do just as much as he did in this book. The fact that he's a mnemonicos is irrelevant. I love that, though, actually. I like that it doesn't matter at all. It's kind of great. It's kind of great that his one defining characteristic about being in the mnemonicos is just not important.
I know, and it's like the first thing that's introduced in the, first chapter when he's 12 is like, you're super special, yeah.
Even before that, there's those definitions at the very beginning of the book where they define the word mnemonikos.
And then it has no real bearing on it. Though if the entire thing is revolving around the idea that like memory is power, history, etc., forgetting is a terrible thing. No, but if it's mentioned, you just said it was mentioned.
It was mentioned, yeah.
So maybe that's like the low-key truth of the book, but for whatever reason, the author just decided not to make it the big theme of the book. It's
very possible. So they go and meet the dragons. They go to the dragon cave to see the rest of the brood of dragons. They have to pass by the bulls and, ask for permission to enter. It's a very sort of formal thing to, please, great master of your harem, can we enter and admire your family or whatever?
Dragons are never casual.
Yeah, I know. They're never just, yo, sup, come check out my ladies. So they go in there and they meet the dragons, and Deburah has laid an egg. And Daviot is all about this egg.
Like super excited.
It's kind of amazing that apparently the dragon master, the bonding of a dragon master with the dragon sort of helps lead to egg creation.
Why?
I don't know. For the rest of this book, Daviot's like, that egg was as much my creation as, and this is a quote, the bull that seeded her.
No, why?
Yeah. He says that like 3 or 4 times, almost that exact phrasing. And I am super uncomfortable with it.
That's why. Okay, so that opens up so many questions.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so like clearly they're in little threesomes now when they have a dragon master, which is totally fine. But then how come?
What do you mean threesomes?
Like there's like the male dragon, the female dragon, and
the male has a harem.
Right.
So just to be clear, he's in a whole other thing.
But I'm talking about there's just like a little triad of like people invested in this.
Oh, we're back to triads.
Yes. There's little triads of people invested in these eggs. Or not people, but dragons.
Yeah, there's a triad of things invested in the eggs.
Right.
The female dragon, the male dragon, and the dragon master. Not invested, but at least part of its creation.
Correct.
Ostensibly.
So how come prior to them having dragon masters or whatever, how did it work? Yeah.
Yeah. I had that exact thought. I actually wrote it down here. I don't know. My guess is that it's supposed to be that the dragon masters help it along, that they make it more likely. They're not necessary, but they are a catalyst maybe or something like that increases the likelihood because, and this is great to quote, dragons mate frequently but are seldom impregnated.
But there's like a whole other culture up here with the dragons and not enough explanation, and I really have questions and want to know how it works.
Me too. And none of the dragons have any personality. So just to be clear, we don't, nothing distinguishes any of the, I can't tell any of them apart personality-wise. They're just dragons.
That's a choice.
They're sentient, but they have no personalities because we don't spend enough time with them learning anything about them.
Which is a shame when the entire book is leading up to dragons.
And the dragons are just sort of literally vehicles to carry out the will of the protagonists.
Okay, I'm just going to accept it.
I mean, what else can you do? You can argue with the book all you want. There's no more information in there.
Okay.
And Daviot and Ryan then go have sex because it's somehow made more powerful since being around the dragons heighten their senses.
That was their reaction to the dragon egg?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Wait, I have a question. Did he call out the dragon's name when he was having sex?
Deburah! I wish. That would have been really funny. But Ryan has the same connection with her dragon, which is some weird name I can't pronounce. So I kind of love the dragons have crazy fantasy names. And then there's Deburah the dragon.
Maybe it's supposed to be like Deburah.
Probably, but I love Deburah so much I'm not giving it up. And Urt eventually calms down. They go down and meet the change in the valley, and they spend some time, and the dragon castle's all decrepit and falling apart because there's no one there to maintain it. So they start making plans for how they're going to accomplish their new world order. And this is really weird because this is basically that freshman psychology major who says, if I was in charge of the world, I would make sure that everything works so much better than it does now. And you just know that if you should put them in charge of anything, they would fail at it because they have no idea about the complexities of actual government or bureaucracy or people. Uh-huh. But now this guy has dragons backing him up. So imagine actually putting that guy in charge. And that's what the rest of this book feels like. So they're trying to convince Tesdal to go against his people. They're going to enact some plan. We actually don't learn what the plan is, because that always sort of does that fade to black thing, like we discussed it and eventually came to a conclusion. They never tell you what it is yet. But they have to convince Tesdal to go against the On and to abandon the idea of the Great Coming, where they come back and reinvade and retake by force Callumbeck. While they're doing all this, Bellic is kind of being weird, and Daviot says, "You know from this accounting of my life, the teaching of my college that allowed me usually to interpret a body's language." Sure, I didn't know that, but I'm glad you told me.
You got taught that? I didn't realize.
Yeah, neither did I. But apparently he's having trouble understanding Belix, and he follows him into the Brood, where he's very sad.
Belix is?
Bellic is, yes. And he tells Daviot that his dragon died. Like, the dragon he was bonded to died. And he is very, very sad. And he would have committed suicide earlier if it wasn't for Deburah and a few others who are the daughters of the dragon, and as much his children as his dead dragon's children.
So, can you only bond with one dragon?
Yep, apparently.
And then the dragon are his children.
Yep. Well, yeah. Pretty much.
Basically.
And he tells Daviot that there is a price to be paid for becoming a dragon master, and that price is longevity.
But they don't warn you about that at a time. It's not like it was like in the fine print on the agreement when they bonded with their dragons.
And he says you still haven't made the decision. Like, the bonding is still in process. It takes a little while for them to become fully dragon masters.
Okay, but he's already attached to the egg, so it's a little too late for him.
I'm just saying, Bellic gives him an opportunity and says, hey, so you know, you're going to watch all your friends grow old and die, and you're going to be a lonely old person just like me. You still up for this?
Well, yeah, because Rowyan's around.
Yeah, and David's like, sure, and I have Rowyan, and Bellic's like, you can't tell the others.
How come only he gets to know?
Because what if the others decide to leave?
Well, that's their right. How come only Daviot gets to choose?
Because if any of them leave, they can't accomplish their goal. And Bellic's, you can't let them leave because we need Dragon Masters, and you need them to be part of your group here if you're going to enact this great plan of yours.
No, that's not okay.
David's like, I feel bad about it, but okay, I won't tell them.
That's their lives.
Oh, it gets so much worse. It gets so much worse. I love this. This is so good. So he goes back to Ryan, and she immediately senses that something's off about him, and pretty much guesses that there's some kind of price to be paid for being a Dragon Master.
Why would you guess? Why? Why would that be your first thought?
Well, she says that, like, you talked with Bellic for a long time, and you seemed troubled. Did he tell you something? And she says, did he tell you not to tell anyone what he told you?
That's not how that conversation would go down at all.
That's what she says. He's like, well, I want you to honor that and not tell anyone. And he's like, well, I don't know. I feel like I should tell Urt. I should tell Tesdal this thing. She's like, no. She starts, like, making out with him and arousing him as a way to sort of get him to agree to her. And it's very weird. Like, she's using sex as a tool to get him to agree to not tell the other people his deep, dark secret about the price we paid for being a Dragon Master.
Did he tell her?
He didn't tell her explicitly, but she basically guessed it out.
Why would you guess that? The whole conversation does not make sense to me.
She didn't guess that there was, like, specifically that you're all going to grow old together and, you know, there's going to be pain. She just guessed that there's something about this that isn't quite right, that Bellic's been hiding, and that Bellic made Daviot promise not to tell anyone.
Okay. And then she makes out with him, trying to get him to...
Well, it does more than that. And she says, I felt guilty, and she persuaded me that I was innocent. So, good job, Ryan. And they start to have sex, and he says, and I was no longer sure whether I lay with Ryan or Deburah, and cared not which.
No!
So, like, their mind link is open the whole time. And it's very weird.
That would be less weird. I mean, it's weird anyways, because it's like a completely different species and not really a humanoid species.
Yeah.
But also, it's weird because you said that there's not any kind of like personality that any of these dragons have.
No, none.
And they're just like vaguely sentient, so that seems even stranger.
Yeah, they talk, they speak with them in their mind, but it's very weird. And so he protests a lot that the love he has with Ryan is different than the love he has with Deburah. But then there are sentences like this where I'm like, are you sure? It feels to me like you want to bang that dragon.
I think it's the same. If he's thinking about her while they have sex, it's kind of the same.
It's not even thinking about her. It's like it all gets jumbled up in his head because like the emotions are all shared between them. So it's not just a link of like psychic. It's like a empathic link as well.
Yeah. That's an interesting author choice.
It is. And again, I love it. It's so good. It makes this book so much crazier. So they spend all winter in the Dragon Castle, learning to be Dragon Masters and strengthening their bonds with their mounts, making plans to impose this new world order on the people. I have a lot of problems with this because, first off, they are not like trying to make the world a better place. They're just imposing their vision on it. And maybe their vision is a better vision, but like, who elected them to make the decision for the whole world? There was nobody in Deburah that asked Daviot, hey, I don't like the way things are. Can you go change it?
I mean, the population there, I absolutely understand what you're saying, and I actually had that thought earlier, but also the population there is receiving all of these benefits from other people.
Right. But even for the changed aren't asking them for help either. The changed in Deburah say, we don't need you to solve our problems. We have our whole plan. We have our alliance with the On. We're going to overthrow them and we're going to establish our own order.
But even some of the changed don't agree with that plan.
Not necessarily. They agree that it should be freed, but they don't necessarily agree about starting a war to do it.
It would make more sense to go, like, the plot would probably make more sense if they had a whole bunch of changed behind them.
Or anyone, but it just feels like he took this upon himself to impose this world order. Like, these four people decided, no, this is the way the world should be. And they didn't, like, talk about it. He spent a year wandering around the country, and while the chains were oppressed, he didn't get a sense that, like, there was a yearning for a different world. Like, it was all very, sort of feels perfunctory. Right. Like, we just have to accept that his vision of the world is the correct vision.
But it obviously is, because he's the protagonist, Sam.
That's my point. That's my point. And
we know that this book has already told us that whatever the protagonist thinks or does is the correct thing.
Well, so they're having these discussions, and they're about ready to launch their big plan to action. And Daviot has a thought, and he's constantly sort of second-guessing himself and talking about how power corrupts, but he never actually does anything about that. He just lets it corrupt, I guess. And he says, not for the first time, I wondered if what we did was right. If we looked to overturn some natural order that defined men in strata, master and servant, friend and enemy. And I'm like, what? Oh, okay, suddenly you're thinking that it's a natural order for us to have slaves. And we're overturning that by doing this. Like, what?
Yeah, that's how I heard what you said.
It's completely bonkers.
Like, clearly it needs to be overturned. Whether or not they're doing the right thing, I don't know.
Right. The current order sucks, but whether their vision is the right vision is, we don't even know what their vision is yet. At this point in the book, we have no idea what their ultimate plan is. We just know they are the right ones, and they're going to impose it by force.
That's true. It faded to black, so we don't have that information.
Yeah, and their vision isn't like they're going to go and try to change hearts and minds by inspiring people. They're going to roll in with flying super weapons and say, do what we say or we'll blast you out of the sky.
I mean, they're probably right. They have dragons on their side.
Okay. It just feels very kind of colonialist in a way.
Yes. Do you feel like this world would be overturned by anything other than force?
Well, so possibly. I think he's been trying to build up that that's the only way to solve this problem. This world is so entrenched in its ways that only the threat of dragons can solve it. I just don't know if I believe it.
Yeah. If he's the only person that's ever supposedly ever had these, like, somewhat empathetic viewpoints, then I feel like force would be probably the only way to overturn
I agree.
that.
And that's true. I agree with that. I just don't believe that he's the only person who ever had these thoughts. Like, you have the changed who got married to the Truman.
Right.
There are other people who clearly think differently, but they're also just dismissed. So it's not that he's earned the leadership role. He's not earned any right to be a world-shaping figure, much like
how he, like, became the leader at school.
Yes. That's about to say the exact same thing. How he became the leader at school. He didn't earn that. He was just given it. So I feel like that's more of that only on a global scale as opposed to a small militia in his city.
Yes, but it's prophetic dreams, Sam, so it must be fine.
Sure. Also, do you remember the haunted woods that he's been dreaming about?
Yes.
That never comes up again.
Really?
Ever. Nope.
Then why? Why was it in his dreams? Why was it in the beginning of the book?
Yeah, nope. They never go back to it. It never comes up again. They never visit it. They never mention it. They never dream about it again. It's done.
That's so weird.
I was really waiting for it to come back. I'm like, maybe it's come back in the next chapter. Maybe they go there at the very end as some sort of, like, tribute to all this fallen soldiers. Nope. Just nope. Never mentioned again.
Oh, this book.
So, this book is the best. It surprises you. It definitely surprises you. All right, so a couple of weeks before the big invasion is supposed to happen, they take the dragon south to first Trebizond and they just wreck shop. They tear it apart. On their way there, Urt, like, vomits on himself, apparently, because he's so, like, nervous and uncomfortable with the idea of destroying his people, which I get.
Are they killing the change, too?
Yeah, they kill the change. Their plan is to cut off the ruling class of all of these people and establish a new system. Like, to basically dissolve all the governments by destroying the leaders.
Okay. So they're not just killing, like, random village folk. They're just mostly just killing the people in charge.
Yes, or anyone who resists them. Although they don't quite have complete control of the dragons, who are very eager for the fight, and they'll sometimes just kill.
Okay.
Collateral damage is the thing.
That's a plan.
Yeah, it's a plan. And so they go to Trebizond, they wreck the palace down, and Urt is very upset. He's like, please, let's not kill more than we have to, maybe.
Voice of reason.
Yeah, Davio's like, it's okay, Urt, I know this is tough for you. These are your people. If you can't do this, you can step out. It's fine. You can take a break. We'll let us handle this.
Except that he can't, right? Because didn't the dragons just say you need all 4 people or this will never work?
Well, Urt says, no, I can't do that because if I step out, it'll just be that Truman were imposing their will on us again. It was just Truman doing this. I have to be part of it for it to be accepted as something that was coming from all of us, not just another Truman trying to keep down the changed. And they go and they land and they find that a lot of the counselors, all the government people, a lot of them have been killed, but Alanna's still there, and she's not happy to see them.
Go figure.
And she's like about to throw magic at them, and Urt shouts, "We bring peace to the world, shall you listen?" And I'm like, what? You just invaded their city with dragons, tore apart their government building, killed a bunch of their government, and you're like, wait, we want to talk about peace. And you expect us to, like, stop and be like, okay, let's chit-chat? It's nutso. Like, that's their plan.
Why don't they just kill her?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
So Alanna throws a magic bolt at Davio to try to kill them, or Ryan, it doesn't matter, but Ryan manages to turn it away with her magic, which apparently was strengthened by her communion with the dragons. So she's now super powerful.
Oh, of course.
Why? I don't know.
Because she is bonded with a dragon who is super powerful, and the dragon eats magic crystals.
All right, well, you've convinced me. So David says, we build a new order in which all have a place and a part. And I'm like, this doesn't sound like a great sell. It sounds very cast and structured. I'm like, I don't like that. And the whole, like, reimpose a New World Order language, again, is very creepy and dictatorial.
So is the New World Order, like, who's in charge in the New World Order?
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. And so Lannon says, shall your dragons make the change, forget the oppression of the Truman? Shall you persuade the On to forget the Dar that drove them from their home? And David's like, no, but we can only look to the future, not the past. And we have dragons to enforce it if necessary.
That's the thing.
And then she still fights them, and Ryan binds her with occult powers that drain her magic, because she can do that now.
It's convenient timing. I'm glad that she has all these abilities now.
And then they let Urt cut her head off.
Oh.
Because it has to come from him. Otherwise, again, it'll be said that it was Truman doing it, not the change. But I'm like, they could spin that anyway. They said the change made him.
Thinking that as like that he could still be a bad change.
Or they can just say that the Truman made the change do it. Like, it doesn't excuse it. And he's not very good at it, apparently. And he fails to cut her head off cleanly. And it's a whole mess. And everyone vomits. So. So then Davio goes out into the city and finds their previous jailkeeper, the one who, like, kidnapped them on the boat and took them all up north.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hey, your wraith is no longer existing, but why don't you get some people together and form a new council? And we have some talk of peace that will be coming up shortly, and we'll be back.
But what stops the new council from being any different than the old council?
Dragons, Daniela, dragons.
That's not how that works. They're just the threat of a dragon doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't people within a governing body that have differing opinions or dislike the dragons or whatever.
Yep. Good point. All good points. That's not part of their plan, Danielle. Not part of their plan.
Dragons are powerful. I don't know if they're that powerful.
So, and then Davio muses to himself, power corrupts. It's a heady brew that is hard to resist. I pride myself that I did. So, nice pat on the back there, friend. Glad you could do that.
Does he, though? He seems like he's kind of, like, getting corrupted by power.
Yeah, he kind of does. Like, again, If this book is a satire of an unreliable narrator puffed up by self-importance, I am all here for it. I think like his constant self-praise and yet his utter failure to do any of the aspirational things he thinks he is kind of great.
What an odd protagonist.
So they wreck all the skyboats there. Tesla has some mixed feelings about that. And Art has some mixed feelings about wrecking the Changed. And so far, Ryan and Davio have no problem.
I was going to say, do they get to have some mixed feelings? Do they go and like destroy some mages in the mnemonic school?
They will,
or
and
anything?
then they'll have mixed feelings, but they only have mixed feelings about when their people are hurt.
Yes, of
So
course.
that is also, again, not very compassionate. Doesn't really show that they're enlightened in any way, that they don't have those visceral reactions to other people being harmed, only their own kind.
Well, it was only like a year ago that Davio realized there were differing levels of sadness. So
That's a very good point. 2 years, Danielle. 2 years.
2 years ago. Well, I don't know if he's learned
Year
that
and a
much
half?
in the last
I don't
2
know.
years.
The timeline is wonky. All right, and so then they fly south, and they manage to fly over the border cities without a problem because they took them by surprise.
But they just fly over them and they're just like, oh my gosh, there's dragons. And then they're gone.
Yeah, apparently the border cities couldn't see them flying from far away and couldn't get ready in time.
No
Like,
wonder why
so
they always get destroyed during the on attacks.
Right, if they can't see a giant... Here's the thing, like, there's squadrons of dragons here. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of dragons, apparently, as part of this thing. First off, where did all those dragons come from? How were there so many freaking dragons and nobody knew about them except for a few small groups?
That's why they were almost going to die out. Maybe there used to be like hundreds of dragons.
There are hundreds of dragons still.
But maybe, then there used to be thousands of dragons and now they're dying out because they don't have dragon riders.
Okay, it just doesn't make any sense. And so apparently the border cities, they just either fly too swiftly or whatever, can't see the dragons coming in enough time to do anything about it, which is not so. Again, as you point out, their whole job is watching the skies to keep an eye out for the on.
Yeah, and they're like, aerial attacks are literally their thing. So you'd think they'd be really, really good at identifying aerial attacks.
But the border cities that were so built up just are inconsequential. They fly over and they head to Kerbrin, which is the capital of Dar, and they do the same kind of shock and awe thing where they go in, they murder a whole bunch, they murder their way up to the palace, and one of the male dragons is shot down by a ballista and killed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first and I think only dragon to die in this whole section. And Davio just has a intense reaction to this. What? You just murdered dozens and suddenly one dragon dies and you're all up in arms about it?
Do they have empathetic bonds with like all of the dragons or just their one dragon?
It's kind of like a hive mind.
So maybe that's why.
I get it. They are just murdering without really having any kind of emotional distress about it. And then one of theirs dies and suddenly it's a big deal. I get that it sucks if you have a mental bond and everything, but...
No, I agree. There's varying levels of empathy. You should still feel empathetic for all these other things that you just killed.
Yes, that's it.
And he lost a friend in school.
Yeah, he lost
Puritan.
Cleaton doesn't come back. His other friend Cleaton doesn't come back, really. So all those people that we met in the school, that whole like school section... None of those people matter.
Wasted character, like I said earlier.
You did. You called it. So anyway, they murder their way up to the palace, and they land in the courtyard. They man to see the Lord Protector, and a chained servant comes out, and he's flying the yellow rag of submission. So apparently they use yellow rags for their surrender.
Is it Jareth?
No, that's just a chained servant.
No, the
comes out and
Jareth
surrenders.
is he the Lord Protector?
No. He's the regent.
The regent. Sorry, can't keep
the Lord
all
Protector
the names
is like
straight.
the kid, the 16-year-old kid. And later out comes some general, and he says, "Who are you to demand to see the Lord Protector?" And I was like, "Have you seen our dragons, dude?"
I was gonna say, like, oh, I don't know. I have a bunch of dragons, though.
And part of me is like, that's a good question. Who are these jerks? You know, they come in out of nowhere, murder everyone. It's like, let's see the Lord Protector. On the other hand, freaking dragons, man, get off the program.
That guy's really brave, though. You gotta give him props for walking out there and being like, screw your 100 dragons, I don't care.
Yeah, so Davio like makes a big gesture about the dragons. He says like, you can smell the spilled blood and the dragon's breath, and be I honest, the emptying of their bowels. So apparently the dragon's just crapping all over the courtyard like birds.
Such unnecessary details.
It's great. This book has all the details you never knew you wanted. And probably so don't.
None of the details I actually need.
It's great. I love it. It's so good. I kind of love it. And now I remember why I kind of love this book so much. It took a little while, but it pays off. And then he says, power corrupts, but its usage can be most enjoyable.
It's like the 5th time he said that.
Yeah, he's still ragging at it. It's not subtle. And then he has a brief moment of uncertainty again where he says, and who was I to pick and choose from the nobility of all Darbeck who should rule and who should not? But then again, why should I not? So that was easily resolved.
So he's going to rule?
He's going to pick who rules.
He's going to pick. Why is he... I know we just kind of talked about this, but how come he's in charge of picking who rules? Like, what makes him capable of picking a ruler?
Dragons, Danielle.
That doesn't imbue you with,
that gives him the ability to pick. It doesn't mean he has the skill. I agree.
It doesn't make you, more wisdom-y.
Luckily, it all works out.
Of course.
So Jareth and the Lord Protector comes down. The Lord Protector is just all about those dragons. And he loves them. He is not afraid. And Jareth the Regent is very angry about all this. He is mad and he is very disrespectful. And Daviot starts their spiel about we want to build a new world. It began already in our Darbeck and we would take it to the On next and convince them. He takes the Lord Protector aside because the Regent is constantly trying to say, no, this is terrible. And while they do that, the Regent gives the order to have them attacked and killed. So some crossbow bolts are fired at them, which do nothing.
They think they're going to take down the dragons.
Yeah, and the dragons just tear the Regent in half, just murder him, straight up.
I mean, you did just try to take on 100 dragons.
It's dumb. It's very dumb. So they kill him, and the Lord Protector's like, all right, I think I'll listen to you. And he invites him in, and they spend a week at the palace eating and talking and making plans.
Where are the dragons, housed during this?
Belloc takes them out hunting every now and then. They just sort of hang around.
They just hang out, on top of the castle.
Yeah,
they're
I guess.
big. Where are they hanging out? In their destroyed
they poop
cities?
Everywhere, apparently, and they just make a mess. And they go hunting. I don't know, Danielle. It doesn't matter.
Do you think the stable hands are in charge of coming out to clean up the dragon poop?
Probably still to change slaves. They haven't fixed that problem yet.
Yeah. They're spending a week and not fixing the problem.
Well, they spend a week talking about it and they say, okay, first off, here's what you're going to do. You're going to make the change free people. Step 1. Step 2, you're no longer a king. You're going to govern by a council of alders together with chosen representatives from the Sorcerer's College and the Mnemonicos College. So why do you need people from the Mnemonicos College on this council? I don't know.
So you don't repeat history? I don't know.
Probably. That's a good reason. It isn't given in the book. The Lord Protector is kind of on board with all of this. He's like, okay, that sounds good to me. And then he says that you're going to have to let the On come back and settle if they want in Columbeck. So we're not going to give them the land in the sense of turn it over to them for control, but we're going to make it open to immigrants who want to come over and settle there and start new lives. And some of the nobility are objecting to this. Some of the people who are in the room when they're having dinner are like, this is ridiculous. The dragons are out hunting. Let's just kill them now while the dragons are away. And instead, Tezel goes up and almost murders the noble person. But the Lord Protector says, don't do that. That's not right for you to do that. Have him executed by my order. And so then he kills the nobleman who was dissenting, and suddenly everyone's on board with this plan.
Well, I don't want to die. But also, it's not that I disagree that all of these things kind of need to happen, but do they have anything in place to, prevent society from crumbling their entire infrastructure?
There's no constitution. There's no, documentation about this. It's just, hey, you're not a king anymore. Form a council with representatives. How many representatives? Figure it out. I don't know. That's your problem. It's again, very much like a freshman poli-sci major coming up with a new government.
Right. And that's I agree on broad strokes, all this stuff needs to happen. But if there's no infrastructure in place for the society to continue functioning on some level, then they need to figure out the different layers of okay, so you free all your slaves, which is great. But then are they going to continue? Who's going to do all the work? Or are you going to pay them to be in those positions and they can stay on if they want to?
That'll destroy the economy.
Right, or leave if they want to, or they can get paid to do the same jobs, or who's going to take over those jobs? And if the On come in, are they going to feel like they're living in a space that is controlled by other people?
Protections for them against discrimination for the council. Is it going to be elected? Who's going to pick the counselors?
Yeah.
Because if it's just the Lord Protector picking the counselors, he's effectively still a king.
Right, and he's probably picking people who are in his pocket, so they're not you have to have people from all the different areas so that everybody's represented.
And there's no elections or anything established. I don't know. None of that's discussed. It's just, hey, Old world dead, new world order, figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by them being the poli-sci or the freshman philosophy majors coming in and like giving that guy the power to actually make a government without any knowledge of how it actually works, the bureaucracy or the functioning parts of it.
Yeah, like all this stuff definitely needs to happen, but you just have to you have to think about the repercussions and like what are your plans for those repercussions then?
They do not. They do not think about that.
Oh, society's gonna crumble, they're all gonna die.
Yeah, they don't. So anyway, they settle all that and they say, okay, now we have to go fly to the On and we have to go do the same thing for the On. So they fly away, the dragons take them up over the ocean, and they're flying away, and they say they're elementals in the high skies where they're flying. And that's cool.
There are elementals just there.
They just exist in nature, fleeting visions glimpsed from the corner of my eyes.
So there's some kind of like, maybe not sentient, but some kind
they're
of
sentient.
Like... They are?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, they don't like being imprisoned, and they murder the heck out of the On when they get freed, and they like give thanks and like kiss Daviot and Ryan and people when they're freed as like thanks.
So they're like actual little creature things.
Yeah, they're like some magic being.
We had a whole discussion about this. So.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad we found out more 300 pages later about what these elementals were.
And so they're flying over the ocean. It takes them 2 days to get there. And they spend 1 day just camped out on the ocean with the dragon sort of floating there like waterfowl.
Did anybody like try to shoot at them or anything from the islands or?
The Sentinels? No, they were given word from the Lord Protector to let them pass.
Okay.
And then they get to the island of the On fishing and they realize that there are volcanoes on the island that give them power. Like their magic comes from the volcanoes.
You know how they would have known this earlier?
If they had sent a spy?
If they had spies.
Apparently, Dar magic comes from crystals. On magic comes from volcanoes.
How come they never made their own skyboat to, like, go back across the area?
Danielle, I don't know. We've discussed. Why didn't they make regular boats, Danielle? They don't need skyboats. It's just an ocean.
I know.
We've crossed oceans without magic, without sorcerers. We've crossed the Pacific Ocean, which is bigger than a 2-day journey. This is not like something they couldn't do. They just never did it.
So they make it there. There's magic volcanoes.
Yeah, that's where their magic comes from. Like, oh, they fill the boats with volcano smoke, which is how they get their floaty balloons.
Why are all floaty balloons? Why are all their things magical? Like crystals are magical, volcanoes are randomly magical.
Dragons
are magical, possibly because they eat crystals.
Danielle, it's a very small world. There has to be some.
I know, but like, why these specific things? Like, are there any other things that are magical?
I mean, the elementals, I guess, are magical.
Yeah, but they're like magical creatures. Are there any other magical creatures? They don't really discuss that, do they?
No, they don't. Not at all. Again, I feel like there's a lot of world building for the things that I care the least about.
Yeah. So volcano magic.
Volcano magic. They get there. They land in the courtyard of the Altaki, I think, the high priest, the leading magic people of the.
Do they know all this because of what's his face?
Tesdil, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
He also taught them some of the On language, the old-fashioned way, not with magic crystals. They get there and Tesdil dismounts and out after they murder their way up to that place, and the Altaki come out and they're very composed, and the lead priest dude is not having it. He is looking down on Tesdil. He calls him, an outcast. You should be ashamed. You are no longer Kohlrabi. And Tesdil sort of groveling on the ground. And Daviot is not cool with that. And he starts murdering some of the high priests, and they lay waste when none of them will actually listen to them. And Daviot thinks again, power corrupts. I must remember that.
I like that he applies it to like every person in power that he meets, but doesn't apply it to himself.
He is applying it to himself. He's going to all these places, doing these things where he has supreme power, trying to remind himself, wait, I have all this power. I gotta remember, power corrupts.
Right, but he's reflecting on it because he's seeing all these people in positions of power.
But he says, what we did in honest desire for peace, or so I hope. But I could not deny the feeling that it was too wild. I'm like, well, you know what, you're doing... the ends don't always justify the means there, buddy.
It's a little too late. They're already to the On. Like, they've already hit all the other places.
Right? So, too little contemplation, too late. I mean, we thought about this and all the other consequences before you started your imposition, your massacre, and your changing of the whole world order. So they leave that and they go to the capital of the On, where the Kahe Njiwaha, the leader, the king of the On is. And he's a young person, much like the Lord Protector. He lands him there, and Tesla starts to have a conversation with him, and he drops to his knees and bows to him. And the king says, no, you are an outcast. You don't exist anymore. Your name has been taken away. Your parents, when they heard about how you betrayed us, when you took the prisoners away from Trebizond, they committed suicide. They took the way of honor, much like your wife did. You're nothing. And Davio tells Tezdal as he's freaking out, I am sorry, but set your grief aside for now. You must, lest the dragons take offense and start murdering everybody.
Take offense that Tezdal feels grief?
Yeah, basically the dragons get offended whenever, like, the dragon masters are as dear to them as the dragons are to the dragon masters. So if you're causing pain or mental anguish to one of them, they'd be offended by that.
Got it.
And so they finally get Tezdal up on his feet so he can translate for them. They start talking with the On about how they have to reorder everything and how the new world should be ordered under the winged shadows of the new Lords of the Sky.
Are the On offended by the term Lord of the Sky?
He doesn't say that to them. He just thinks it. So probably they would be. But he doesn't mention it.
How come nobody ever tried a peace party first? Like, they didn't even attempt
That's
some kind of peaceful
right. They just
overthrow.
went straight to, like, he didn't just fly over and say, hey, we have tons of dragons, and we will lay waste if you don't at least have a summit or something. They don't even try that. They immediately go to murdering the entire government and setting up a new government from scratch with very little details.
Yeah, it goes from 0 to 60 pretty quick. You think that they'd at least attempt some kind of reconciliation between all the
And that's what I'm getting
places.
at. Like, their whole idea that we know what to do and this is what we have to do. Like, they didn't even try anything else. They didn't talk to the people. They didn't see what the people wanted.
Well, so far so good.
Yeah. So they talk to him. They eventually convince him that this is what's going to happen. You're going to be able to have an exchange of people from back and forth across the ocean where you can settle there and they can settle here. And they bring the Lord Protector over to meet the King of the On. And they get along really well because they're two young people who are leaders, who feel the loneliness of leadership or whatever and find some kinship there.
See, they could have done this to begin with.
Yep. They let them form some other kind of like United Nations Council. So that is made up of the Change, the On, and the Dar, apparently. And they sort of leave back up to the Dragon Castles and sort of try to let the world sort of sort itself out. They say, we started the process, now we have to let it finish itself because we can't always be the ones making the decisions. It has to come from the people as much as it comes from us so that they can own it.
So they like go in, destroy everything, and then they're like, good luck, we got y'all together. Peace out.
Kinda. They go in, they destroy a bunch of stuff. They say, here's what you gotta do. Establish a new government in this way. How? Figure it out.
And also, if you don't, we'll be back with our dragons.
And they do. They come back a few times to stamp down some insurrections that start up. And they go back, and so they're around the dragon castles. And Davio's feeling kind of bad about how everything sort of played out. Mm-hmm. You know, he's saying, I feel bad about this. Was this the right choice? And Ryan says to him, yeah, totally the right choice. I've done what I've done because I saw no other way, and I do not feel guilty. I regret the blood we shed, but do I remember this, all right? You cannot cook a fish without gutting it first, lest after you fall sick. So basically, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. We had to murder and throw the whole world into chaos so we could make it better.
Do you know how much follow-up they would have to do after they, like, broke this world? They'd have to, like, keep coming down, because eventually people are just going to be like, if they never see the dragons, if the dragons just say, hang out in their castles, if they don't ever see the dragons, they're going to forget that there are dragons.
Yeah, so the dragons, I think basically the dragon riders are back. Well, first off, Bellic goes and commits suicide. He jumps into the dragon graveyard, which is a valley full of dragon bones. So like an elephant graveyard, but for dragons.
That's intense. That's something that they get to look forward to in their old age.
Yeah, so when dragons die, that's where they go. They go back to the castle, and they, are going back and forth for the first couple of years to fly down and impose things, and they slowly pull back from the world, where they're still around, but they're not as active in enforcing the New World Order because it's now sort of up and running.
Are there more dragon riders now? Because
they will come later. First, Tezdal...
There's more to the story?
Yeah, a little bit. So Tezdal has a crisis of conscience. He feels like he has nothing left. He goes up to a parapet at one point, and Davio follows him, and they're talking, and Tezdal's like, I have nothing left. I need to end my life. This is it for me. I took the way of honor. I can't live with the pain of betraying my people, betraying my dream, even if it was for a better thing. And I was like, what? We can't leave. There's so much for you to live for. You have your dragon. And he's like, yes, I have my dragon, but you have your dragon, you have Ryan. Could you choose between the two of them? If you had to choose which one you'd want, who would you pick? And Davia's like, I couldn't make that decision. And Tez was like, I had to make that because my wife, who I loved, killed herself. I've only loved 2 women. And Davia, the little light bulb goes off and figures, oh, you loved Ryan, too. He's like, yes, of course I did. Duh. But she'll not have me. She loves you. And I'm not going to fight you for her because that's stupid. And now Urt has a wife because Urt now is courting. There's a girl in the village of Change who live near the dragons who has been hooking up with Urt. And so they are getting married and she's going to go live in the castle with him. Yeah. So that's cool for Urt, but also very fast. But Tesla's like, I have nothing but my dragon. She'll be fine. She'll live on without me, but I can't bear my loss, my grief anymore. And so he does the seppuku thing where he cuts open his stomach and has Davio chop off his head.
That's a little intense.
It's very intense, much like with the horse.
So I'm still kind of confused between the dragon and human bond.
It's a love, Danielle. It's a love bond.
It's a love between them. Is the dragon really going to be okay without the Dragon Master?
Probably. He's like, she'll grieve, but she'll be fine.
But what's his face wasn't okay. Bechtel or what?
Bechtel. Whole difference. And this book fails the Bechtel test hard.
It does. But he like couldn't handle it when his dragon died.
No, he couldn't.
Do you think it's just because he was like alone in the castle with his dragon for years?
I mean, he was old. He was alone. They never really got a straight answer for how long he lived. And it was, the grief of losing the dragon. Like, he kept living for decades afterwards because he had other dragons to take care of. So he was fine. Just now that he saw his legacy was intact, he could let go.
Okay.
I agree. It's still not entirely clear.
It's not clear. But that's okay. So the dragon survives and he dies.
And they dump Tezel's body in the elven graveyard of dragons.
Seems kind of rough since he wasn't that connected to his dragon to begin with. You think they'd send his body back to On or something?
It's been a few years, Danielle. They have a connection.
Okay. Obviously not strong enough for him to continue living.
Clearly not.
So does he kill himself because... I don't quite understand why he killed himself.
He kills himself because it's all about like honor, and the Korabi, again, is kind of a Bushido thing. Where
yes, I get the cultural implications of why he would kill himself in the culture that he was raised in.
Yeah, there's that, but also his whole family killed themselves. There's his lineage is out. He has no family anymore. He has nothing left to live for. Basically, is what his feeling is.
But he has I get it. I do get it. But at the same time, he has an entire he helped bring peace to an entire area. He has new friends and dragon lovers.
That's done. That's done now. He doesn't have any companionship. He doesn't want to sit there and watch, Urt be happy with his wife and Davio be happy with Ryan and all of this stuff and be alone without any love from humans.
He doesn't know that he will not have other lovers in the future.
Well, Danielle, I agree that it's quite a bit of despair, but apparently his honor, his culture, everything just drove him to do it.
Okay. I'm willing to go with it. I was just questioning the psychological aspects of it because I don't quite understand his character. Again,
we don't spend a lot of time with his character in terms of from the young age, understanding all of this. It's all very sort of assumed, so we just have to go with it.
I'm willing to do that.
So Davio is a little sad about that.
Just a little though, because, no big deal.
He's cut up about that, and eventually Ryan and Urt comfort him you had to do what you had to do. You were a good friend because it was the only way for him. And then his dragon is very sad, but the egg hatches. That Daviot's egg hatches.
I was going to ask about that. So it took years?
Yeah. They apparently the gestation period is years long. And the egg hatches, and apparently dragons are not very parental. It's sort of a communal raising of things, and they don't really care. And so Tesdal's dragon takes over the raising of the bull that was born from the egg, and that's how she sort of overcomes her grief.
Aw, and then Daviat's a happy daddy.
Yeah, and again, he mentions how the baby is as much his as the bull who gave his seed. And I wish he would stop saying that.
It totally is. I'm so glad you got to have a family, and he gets to raise a little dragonling with Ryan.
So there's a coda after the chapter ends.
And Deburah, sorry.
Deburah the dragon.
I didn't want to leave her out.
Can't leave out Deburah the dragon. There's a coda after the chapter ends where it's many years later, and Dodge reflecting back. He says, I'm not sure what we do is the right thing, but It's been decades now. There have been new Dragon Riders come, Changed, and Truman, and Cleaton's son, one of his son, came to be a Dragon Rider.
I'm glad Cleaton wasn't completely forgotten.
And his wife had 7 children, apparently, so that's intense. Some of them went back down south, some of them stayed to help out, some of them take care of Daviot now, who's old and decrepit.
Did any of them become Dragon Riders?
Some of them did, a couple of them became Dragon Riders.
Why is he old and decrepit? I thought he was going to live,
No, because we fast forwarded, this coda is decades and decades later.
Okay, many decades, not just 3.
No. Okay. Ryan has died, has died, he's the last one, and he's alive to basically record his story so that we can all hear about it. And he says at the very end, sort of, but I ramble somewhat. And he goes on to more about, I outlived them all, and I'd wish I'd not. I'd sooner have gone with them. But it was not unhappy. We all of us lived past our natural span, and there were good days in there. They never have children, or if they do, it's never mentioned that he and Ryan have children. When it comes to the end, he's saying, eventually I will, if Deborah will permit me, I'll saddle her one last time and fly her to that valley where the bones are. And does the pale friend meet me there, I'll take her hand and go with her. That shall be a great journey, no? And the book ends.
His relationship with Deborah is my favorite part.
Well, hold your horses, because there's an acknowledgement at the end of this book that is by far the best thing I've read.
Ooh, what does it say?
All right, it says an acknowledgement. Lords of the Sky is not entirely my own book. Originally, the book was a lot more words. Wordier? But my editor got to work and suggested where I might cut the manuscript to tighten it up and keep the narrative flowing without excess verbiage. No less, she pointed out where the psychology of my characters went astray and how to bring them back in line. I believe she made the book better, and for that I owe her. She didn't do enough.
I was gonna say, it makes me wonder what it was like prior to the editing. I really want to read
the director's cut of Lords of the Sky that's 900 pages or 1,000 pages and is a lot wordier and less psychologically sound, because it's gotta be insane. This just really makes me curious. All it does is make me want that book all that much more.
I'd read that book. I'm not gonna lie.
I would read it so fast. Oh, we did it. Lords of the Sky.
Woo, Lords of the Sky. Not the Sky Lords.
Not the Sky Lords.
Don't be confused. Oh. I can't believe we didn't spend more time with the On.
No, they're...
how do we not... They're the entire antagonists of the book, and you spend 2 seconds there.
Yeah, they are largely irrelevant to the plot. It's amazing how much of this book is spent on things... when you think about this book, in the space it takes up in your brain, I would say the last 20% takes up 9% of the space in my brain about this book, because that first 80% of him wandering around, telling stories, getting from Whitefish Village to the college, none of that seems to matter. None of it makes a difference. A lot of that stuff just never pays off. The forest never comes back. His mnemonico skill is kind of irrelevant.
Maybe it's just very lifelike. You know, most things in life aren't building towards a denouement. It's okay. You just have all this random knowledge that you never actually use.
But you don't write a book about that.
No.
You don't read an autobiography. It's let me tell you about every day of my life. And eventually I'll get to the part where I become a famous, powerful person. But first, here's 800 pages of me going to school every day.
Right. But maybe that's what he wanted to go for as an author.
This is a slice of life book, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, a slice of life. Exactly like that.
All right. Well, I gotta say, I feel like this paid off. I knew it's a bit of a slog, but I now remember why I read this book a few times, because one, it doesn't stick in my brain enough that I can read it every time and be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And two, boy, does it ever take some great turns towards the end.
I wish there was a whole sequel about dragon masters and their dragons.
I don't know, is this a Mercedes lackey type thing, like the Dragon Riders of Pern? I haven't read those, but I'm curious now if that series is basically what this book isn't.
It's a possibility. I haven't read those by Mercedes Lackey either. I've read other stuff by her.
Yeah. But that feels like that's, at least from what I understand, it's the quintessential Dragon Rider books that everyone points to. And so I'd be curious to see how those do. And I don't know when they were published, if they came first or later, but I don't know. That'd be interesting to me.
I love how little time not is only spent with the On, but also spent with the dragons, which is literally, like we've talked about, the entire book builds up to these dragons, and it's like such a short amount of time with them.
And there's no personality for them. They don't really do anything. They are just, again, tools that the protagonist uses to accomplish their goal. They don't have any want of their own, no desires of their own. They have no agency.
But they're fascinating tools.
I can't get over that acknowledgement to like, what did that editor have to go through?
I like that this is the edited book, though. That makes me happy.
All right. So if you have thoughts on Lords of the Sky, which I really hope you do, because if you listen to 4 episodes and have no thoughts on it, then what are you doing? But if you do, please contact us at bookretorts.com. It's over. We're done. We're moving on to something else next episode, and I'm looking forward to that.
We're also on Twitter at Book Retorts. You can follow us there for information about when our new episodes come out.
Yep. So come back in a couple weeks for Danielle's new episode.
Yes.
And until then, bye.
Bye. Take care.
Oh, man. I'm glad that book paid off because I was unsure.
The crap's with those dragons? Like, why?
Those dragons are the same, like, his weird, like, sexualization of them, the way he takes ownership of the baby, it's all just so weird and unnecessary.
Yeah, I have some real questions about his relationship with Deburah.